This is my third build in my showcase series. It is TCTM Stealth Tranquility. And just like the others, I'll go over the strengths, weaknesses, what I would change, the difficulty level. This one's going to be pretty long because I do two semi-long fights. I do Fort Apogee and I do Praetorian base. Now, Praetorian's only long because of how much I go through. But you'll kind of see like the fights. They're very quick. Not Apogee though. That one takes a while. So, I do want to apologize in advance for my follower goal being displayed. I didn't notice until after I'd recorded the footage, and I wasn't going to do it over again. I just didn't really have time to do Apogee again. So, I apologize again for that being there. And yeah, I'll give my final thoughts at the end of the video. Alright, there's Fort Apogee, TCTM Stealth Trank. I'll show the build a little bit here, and then I'll also play Praetorian in the background while I go over a few things. So first off, the strengths. I mean, it was able to beat Apogee. Control, lots and lots of control. I mean, I kept them all in that one single area pretty much the entire time. Silent. I know that part that I just showed doesn't really showcase how silent it is. A little bit in the beginning. I know those few guys at the start, but at Praetorian, you'll see like it really shine. It's ranged. The range isn't great, but it's not bad, obviously, especially if you're using distortion. Distortion has much better range than No does. Here's a great thing: is if you actually, let's say, you have a few enemies left. You've burned LOC Mind Break, and maybe two guys are still alive that are mind broken, but you know you can't know them down. That's fine. You actually can just stealth out. You're not in combat. You can immediately uninitiate out of combat, which is great. There's very few ways to do that, so that's really nice. Or here's another option. You can let that turn go, don't wake them up, try and kill them. If you fail, then you can go ahead and stasis. So you have plenty of time to continue doing that. Get like basically another free full turn to finish them. It's very cost effective. This is probably the richest I've ever been. Because size stuff really doesn't cost much money. I don't know what the fuck people are talking about when I hear people say like it's expensive. It's maybe expensive if you innervate a lot. I can see maybe if you're use too many schools, like if you use 3 or 4, then I can see like constant innervations. But I mean, honestly, No, Mind Break, Contraction, LTI, and Stasis, those are like the mainstay. And then I could interchange like Fear, Pseudospatial, that was another one. So I basically only interchange like 1 or 2 spells at a time. Crafting comes easy. You have a lot of ints on this build, so you have a lot of spare points, tons and tons of spare points on this. It's very skill rich, also very feat rich. I have like very questionable feats on here. Sure Step. I know people have their opinions on Sure Step. It's one of my favorite. Nimble. There's another one. Oh, by the way, this is not the order. Can't stress that enough. People were asking me about the order on the last one being questionable, and it's like I'm not putting the order. You guys can figure that out. I actually forgot future orientation in the build. That's something I would get in place of, I don't know, maybe neural overclocking. Mental subversion also kind of sucks. There's lore that's locked behind TC, so that's really nice. If you're like really big into the lore, you can find things that you can't find anywhere else. You have to have thought control for it, and will. You also can level persuasion. You really don't have to invest very much into it. Like, I only put in 35 points, and I think that gets you pretty much most of the checks. Armored enemies don't have reduction against you, so that's really nice. It's also very easy to kite them, so you can kind of take your time killing them like last anyways, but it's really nice that your nodes just go right through their armor. You don't have to worry about that. You can't miss. Speaking of enemies, No is the best killer for the snakes. It pops them right out of the water, and again, you can't miss. So there's really nothing that can kill a snake that's already submerged quite the way that No can. Maybe the other size schools, but from what I gather from talking to other people, I don't think that psychokinesis or metathermics really holds up compared to neural overload in that regard. A trick that I had kind of showcased is really great when you have when you don't have other enemies to come get aggroed. You know, when you have a nice little group where you want to get them all clumped together and get that nice perfect mind break. Or I mean, you can do bilocation, or you can do Fear, or you can do No, but I wouldn't really recommend that. It doesn't do enough damage, and then if you don't kill them, then you're you're fucked. So, weaknesses, you're very squishy. Can't take any hits. I mean, you're 3 con and you're wearing a attack vest and with a beetle carapace, so it's okay. Robots can be kind of a problem, but not really. The thing with robots is they have so many weaknesses that I don't know. I don't have trouble with them even as a side character. I know some people do, but they lose to fucking everything. The little bots lose to attack vests. Plasma sentries lose to shields. They all lose to doors. They all lose to EMPs. Yeah, I mean chatbots. You can kite them all over the place. Their flamethrower does nothing to the shield. Can't get through the shield, I should say. So I just didn't see that as a problem. But I guess, yeah, you can't kill robots like on the fly. Let's say with W2C rounds or something. Range of spells is kind of short. I still think it's it's better than melee, you know. You're still 6 tiles, I believe, for no. The range doesn't really matter that much when you have so much mobility between sprints and contraction. Not to mention, like, all your enemies are controlled. They're not going anywhere, so it doesn't really matter. Another weakness is the mediocre damage output compared to some builds. Still killing, you know, 2 to 3 enemies a turn reliably with should specify that's unbroken enemies that haven't had their mind broken, or you're not getting crits. So it's pretty good. 2 to 3 enemies, not bad, I'd say, and all silently as well. But I guess that's sort of a weakness. You're not putting out the damage that an AR is, but what is really nothing really how damage is an AR, maybe arguably a 5mm SMG on something with no armor. And next I'll go over what I would change, what you could change, the difficulty of the build. I'll scoot on over to the Praetorian footage for that. So things I would change, I have some questionable feats for sure, ones that maybe like certain people wouldn't like. Mental Subversion I felt wasn't super helpful. It helps maybe more in the early game, but by the time you're at end game, it doesn't do shit for you. Sheeper actually had made a build. You should check out his videos if you don't know about him, which I find that hard to believe if you're watching my videos. He does a TC build, and he specs into Tranquility, and he also has Blitz, so he's getting, I think, 11 no's, because he has 110 AP, and then each no is 11 AP, so it's pretty fucking nuts. I've kind of adopted a new playstyle as of late where I try to do the fewest reloads possible. Funny enough, that's why you could see the reload counter on the bottom right corner of the screen. I don't want to reload anymore. I kind of feels like it makes the game too easy when you can just F9 through everything. So right now I'm doing a run where I do the fewest reloads possible. I'm level 21 right now, I think, almost 22. Just finished the first raid on an expedition. So with that all being said, I know that was like a roundabout way of getting to my point, but with that being said, I think that I would get more con in this build, at least enough for fast metabolism. I'd probably cut a couple points in Agi and will. I think I would only need to cut 1 point in will. But the reason my Agi was even that high was so I can get Uncanny Dodge, which I didn't end up needing at all. Now, here are some things that I personally wouldn't change, but maybe you could change if it's like down to your personal preference. But you could get Grenadier, you know, instead of having that much int and agi, you get some points in dex, so you can get Grenadier and trigger happy. I don't like using grenades, damage dealing ones at least, but Grenadier, it would be nice to cut down on those special needs too, so that could help with like robots or applying even more CC, though I never found it necessary to do either of those. But again, just down to personal preference if that's something you would like. You could also get trigger happy, because you will have shitty initiative. That's something I forgot to put in the weaknesses column. You have really shitty initiative and low detection, so arena will obviously hurt you quite a bit unless you use the exploit, and The low detection also kind of stings too. But there is a little trick you can do. What I would like to do is, I like to make a noise, stealth, from my motion detection goggles and kind of look at that space from a little bit of ways away. And then I can detect the enemies from right there. And then if you initiate, you can actually switch out your goggles and put on your headband, your seeker goggles, your smart goggles, your helmet, whatever your personal like headgear is, for free. It doesn't cost any AP because you're not in battle yet. Things that you could change. You don't need persuasion. You can cut that out. I just figured if I'm gonna have that much will, why not? I barely had to invest any in it, and I could use it. So, and I had no shortage of points, as I said. I've never really had an easier time in the game, barring maybe like the build I'm running right now for soft Iron Man, because I got 2 reloads. But being able to completely control all your enemies and silently, so you can pick them off apart, you know, it's an underrated skill. There's really no other method of doing these stealth kills. Unless you use like Vanishing Powder, but I don't use Vanishing Powder. I think they're pretty lame, to be honest. I found this to be like the best build in terms of stealth killing because of how quiet it is. There's literally no noise you make at all. There's really nothing else that can compare to that. Even melee makes noise with the shock. Like if you use shock weapons or energy weapons, or if you're hitting metal. Obviously all guns make noise except for 5mm, but then, or 5mm with a silencer. But then you like completely neuter your damage, and good luck killing everything in that time before like they can act. That just doesn't really happen. I get 4 free turns of inaction from the enemy. Nothing really survives that. And if they do, I can just stealth away, come back after all my cooldowns are back. No other build can do that without Vanishing Powder. I guess you can kind of say crossbows, but crossbows use shock bolts, and shock bolts are loud, and you want to use shock bolts. I mean, those are the best tool and really in the crossbow kit. Now that's just down to how I personally play the game. So some problems that you may face as somebody who, like, let's say you're a newer player, if you don't know like all the mine placement, that could really hurt you, or enemy placement. I do happen to know where just about everything is. Sometimes I forget a few things, but for the most part I know where everything is, so I can kind of plan ahead. So I'm sort of looking at it from that perspective. But even then, man, I mean, with stealth, you decide the terms of the battle, no matter what. So I don't think it's that much of a problem. I think the 3 con could hurt some players, but again, you can add more con, and as what I would today if I remade this build. So those are my thoughts on the build. I do think it's an incredibly powerful build. Can be tough for certain people that don't understand like how to innervate and how to use your spells properly, but I genuinely think it's like one of the more powerful builds I've played, if you know how to play. What I'm working on right now is a sniper retard build, and I'm at 100% crit right now, and theoretically I can get 12 shots off pretty soon here, which means 12 kills in a turn, in one single turn. It's not easy to pull off, and it's also not very practical. I will get into more details about that, but that's one I'm pretty excited to showcase. It's also going to be like the easiest one too, because it's so fucking fast. I am streaming on Twitch. I've been doing like 6 AM Pacific Standard Time, but I'm not going to be able to do that forever. It's typically going to be 8 PM Pacific Standard Time, whatever real life kind of permits. I don't have a specific day. I typically will do Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, and maybe Mondays. It really depends on like what my schedule's like, but I can't really predict it. I can't give a solid day. If anyone has any suggestions on what they want to see next, then please throw it out there. There's also sort of thinking of doing the inverse of this build and doing a PK MT build. I think that would actually be pretty strong too, but we'll see what happens. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys.